So at these little ones, we talk to you. Yes, we love talking to you. We understand that the heart and soul are the rocking place. It's the place where one goes between the heart and the soul, remembering that the integration of information into your spiritual process is not necessarily possible. All right. So there's a lot of information everywhere on the planet. There's information about every single subject. And as the time passes, more discrepancies happen because the little parts of the influences and the inferences that happen are not clarified. All right. So when two people are talking about the same subject, they have to make sure that exactly is happening, that two people are talking about the same subject. Now, let's just go for that little part about how the military is not coming. No one's coming to save you. All right, so it's two different stories right there. The military is on alert for clearing dumps. All right, so they're not coming to save you. They're coming to move their energy through and assist in what is happening, the unfoldment of clearing the deep underground military bases. So the military is going to function in that way. Don't worry about it. But it's not going to function to save each and every human being from themselves, or they're partaking in a controversy, which whether it's about COVID or a vaccine, all right, it is up to each and every human to know their own mind, all right, and the mind is very tricky, and to place that in their heart and let their heart make the super big decisions for themselves, all right? So instead of worrying about the intellect and what the inferences and the parts of the overbearingness of government is going to impress into the psyche, it is as though one must remove themselves from the personality, and move into the heart and allow the psyche that is of a higher level. The heart has ways in which it views everything, and view means that it must have eyes, yes? And so the eyes are one way of perceiving, and they're very necessary in the physical world to be able to discern through the visual patterns, if in fact that is your primary way of looking into the world. And we use the word looking on purpose because there are many people that have primary ways which are kinesthetic. They have a feeling, then they have a knowing, and it doesn't come through eyes or ears or nose or throat. It comes through an absolute knowing in the heart. And also when one is auditory and they're listening for particular information, there is a screening process that goes on. So one person hears material information in one way and another hears it in another way. So you can't depend on those five senses. All right, that's really what we're saying. Do not depend on your five senses now, and know that let's say an appearance of a military force is coming in, and it's to either suppress or enhance a particular faction, or suppress or enhance a particular state of affairs. And that means that there's opposition, and there's a, what is this word? Competition, all right? Enhance or suppress. Whereas in the heart, it is as though there is a neutrality and a presentation of not just information, but the variables that are they're just hanging out, in the ethers all the time. Things you can't predict, things you don't know, and things that have been subversively placed into the unconscious mind. So that is a good place for each one to do their job of opening up and to discover for themselves how it is they are interpreting the reality. So that takes one back to self-responsibility again. So in the last few weeks, we've talked about a few of these possibilities, about how one can look into their heart, look into the we're going to say reservation, like make a reservation to stay in a hotel. Long a time ago, little ones made certain conditions in their world. They brought with them karma, and they had certain understandings and had certain parents and influences upon them. And so that makes a formulation of ways in which material information of all sorts comes into the being. And the being, as we talk about that, is really more about the personality. So if you're going to be deciphering information from the personality level, you're way back in a place where you don't need to be at this point in time. Personality has its own equivalent to a Ouija board, so to speak. And so it's not necessary to use that part of yourself. Use the heart and understand that there is a criteria that you have mastered in this life cycle for your own personality. And now it's time to entirely drop that, to walk away from your personality, walk away from the part of yourself that has a deciphering mechanism that is due to the veil of Maya and due to the old ways in which you have interpreted your world and what the new influences are all about. There's some of these darker characters that are coming into the world. They are masters of psychotic information management and how to move it back and forth. It's almost like it fits into a slot that's ready-made in the psyche of the human, because the human has fear of death, and that's the great big one. And as much as each one works with that, even Dalai Lama says, we'll see. I have done a lot of practicing, but when the time comes, we will see how well I have practiced. So no one knows how it is that they will be awake or sleep or happy or sad at the moment of transition. So not to worry about all that, but to recognize that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be practicing to stay in the moment so that you can recognize who you truly are. That you're not the person, that you have a personality, but your personality is not who you are, so your thoughts aren't who you are, and we say this over and over and over again, but one can never be reminded enough so that you move beyond these interpretations that keep you in the lower forces, the lower frequencies, the places where it is your interpretations don't give you any freedom. You know, an interpretation of anything doesn't give one freedom. It gives them a belief system, it gives them a direction, it gives them a supposition, it gives them a lot of things, but it doesn't give them freedom. All right, so that's what we say about that. Now, this particular period of time, just because big clouds form and thunder rolls doesn't mean necessarily there's going to be lightning, all right? And just because at times you see lightning doesn't mean the thunder is going to roll. There's a combination of elementals that make for a good thunderstorm that has precipitation in it. And so the precipitating factors that are happening now are in conjunction with how each one is able to be in the moment is one way to say it, but in touch with themselves as a whole being. All right, so that's the holism, your wholeness, your ability to be in the present moment and to recognize that there has a physical component that you're able to recognize easily because you have been in touch with that for so long. But the bigger part of you that's been with you all this life and every other life cycle, and it didn't change, it didn't make a new personality, it's as though it is still present, and it is the matrix, the net, the wonderful web of life itself that supports every moment of your existence. All right, so existence, as we say it now, is third dimensional. All right, so you're existing in the third dimension in a body that has certain, it has lots of components, but it has many, many different receptors. That's a good word because it's a current word. There's many different ways in which it accepts or rejects. Some people can be in the sunshine and they go, oh, I can't get enough of the sunshine. And they allow it to hit their skin and they feel the warmth, maybe even to their bones. Yes. And that's a particular way of accepting energy. Other people, if they hit the heat, or they have a recoiling effect. So now none of that is good or bad. It's just the way in which a certain constitution of a certain person in a certain moment interacts with what is present. And that's the absolute truth of all pieces of information as well. So sun is a good example because you can imagine it much more easily. So, all right. So, what we're saying here too is there's still a lot of action, a lot of activity, and there's a lot of deep down and dirty interactions, the dirty things. All right, so you're going to see a few of those start to happen where it is that someone who is losing in fear of their life and in fear of their livelihood and in fear of is much more apt to react with a little bit of violence or a whole lot of violence. So be prepared for that. Know that it's happening all around the planet, because if you had, let's see if we can make this feel kind of good when we talk about this. If you had a very special event to go to in your life, and let's say it was a wedding or a child's birth or some place you've always wanted to go, whatever it is, there is a period of time where there's making ready for all this. And in the making ready for all this, one has to rethink and assess what is happening in order to be up with the very moment that is happening. All right, so this has been going on the very moment, and every time there is a very moment, there's another character that can influence, because they have input into the situation. Many hundreds of thousands of people that have input at this point in time. And remember, like the butterfly wing makes the whole world vibrate, and one little interpretation that can possibly cause a great calamity at the other end of the particular incident. All right, so remember that. And that's why the period time of patience and quietness, because it isn't just one person at all that's making all this. There's the quantum computer, and quantum computer is very capable and has projected far out before 6 months, much longer than that. So the quantum computer, from our vantage point, has within it a great grip on the core issue here, which is to resolve this ability for the human to be, influenced, all right, by the dark side because of their feelings of inadequacy. So they want money, or they want power, or they want position in order to feel better about themselves. That's the key issue here. And so quantum computer computes for that, all right? So you can look forward to that. It's self-worth, self-esteem, self-love, these things that are happening. And they are part of how it is that this particular universe has been operating for so long. And therefore, there are penalties for the people that are feeling less adequate, or, inferior. That's a good word, inferior. And so that penalty is that the universe will show that to the human. They will show them their sense of inferiority, so that one more time they get to measure. That's not exactly a good word, but that's the one we chose. To measure, to tabulate, to position themselves to walk around, not judge like good or bad, but walk around this particular situation and reassess what it is that would be of value in the moment to each and every person, and how can they bring that on. So right now, very lovely, there are those people that are awake to, you have to picture your favorite reality, your best, your highest, your goodest, all these things that make in the person's handling, in the person's manipulating of a particular situation, that they are beginning to think it's like they have some control over what is going on. And we're going to tell you that that isn't always the truth. There isn't always a sense of you have some control. There are some destiny configurations that include thousands and thousands of people, and therefore one is included, and there isn't a whole lot you can do about that. All right, you can wiggle out of it somehow by disappearing. That's why many people are in their most awake state, recognizing and feeling hopeless, because they have a sense that they cannot control it. It isn't, and they add to that, it's not going to come out good. This is not going to be good. That's the mistake. All right, so I can't control it is fine, but to have a sense of it's not going to turn out well, that's the downturn. That's the limitation. That's the messing up of the ability to configure in the reality of materialism what it is you truly want. Right? So you have to be careful of those judgment calls that are happening. All right. Let's see, what else can we say about all this? Still working on second chakra is very important. because there is an influence and a confluence of the, say matrix, but there's a lot of things, intestines and all these little things that are in there that are moving around, and there's a process in there that is like an undulating and a very either smooth moving or jerky moving or not moving at all, and that is in the elimination process. So as you work with what it is you're eating and how it is you're eliminating from your body what you no longer are making use out of, what you no longer need, also on the psychic level, on the psychological level, that is happening even more strongly. So many things that you don't need. You do not need a perception of yourself at all. Not at all. Right? You do not need a perception of your favorite person or your dog or your cat. You don't need even a perception of a B-22 or a great big, massive car or any of those instruments that people use to move themselves around on the planet. You don't need a perception of that. There's just an awareness, right? The perceptions lead into whether you have an acceptance or not of what is. And all those acceptance principles come from your history, your past. What is it that you were able to make peace with in the past? What was told to you that is useful or good or acceptable? All right, so here we go with that acceptance piece again. So it's a continuum, and everything is all wound together. It's like a messy little ball of wool that has been fooled and rolled around with, and it didn't quite get rolled back up with a very tight and very, strong confirmation of putting it all back together in a ball of yarn, so to speak. Right, so it's very vulnerable. A ball of yarn, unless it's put in a plastic bag, is very vulnerable. Even once it gets rolled up, all it needs is like one little part of the thread to come undone, and there it is. It's all unwound again, and that's your reality. Your reality keeps unwinding. Why? Because it's the principle of relationship to the reality. To walk around and be a tight little knit ball, like a knot in your stomach, or your head is hurting, or you're putting your arms in front of your solar plexus, or you're pulling away, it's not useful at this point in time. It's just a form of protection. And in fact, if you are in alignment and you have in the sense of yourself and the sense of others, the goodness and the will to be of service to other people, you can really depend upon that part of the universe that is going to take care of you. So you don't have to worry about your own well-being through that. And because you're busy and you're got lots of, what do we call this? Lots of intensity is one thing, but some people can be nosy, and so then they end up finding out details about another person. And that's not always bad, because if you want to help, sometimes you need to know a few details. But in the larger picture, here's a good question that someone has been asking to us, is that people get into a place where it is they are listening to what is happening in politics, they're listening to what is happening in the health field, they're listening to all the details, and they get to a point where they say, that's not my job. My job is to have light and love and to hold space for the blessings and for the good of the planet. All right. So ideologies are they're useful for the personality. All right. So the personality has that. And that's a set perception. Now, we're not saying it's wrong, but if that's your only perception and you're tied to it and you have a state of, I'm not going to get into that, I'm not going to look into that because that's not my job, and I am not going to have to do that because I don't believe in it. Well, we told you already, belief systems are good for nothing, basically, at this point in time. So these are parts of how the human operates, how they keep themselves safe, how they keep themselves distancing from subject matter and other people and conversations. And to be able to move into a way of solving what has not been solvable is one word, but has not been communicated about enough and deeply enough so that there can be a real understanding of where each person's information is coming from and what that particular outlook from each particular person is calling forth. And it's usually an emotion and a protection, a defense system. Right? So, all right. So that's what we say about that. That's good information.